Well, my favorite saint, though, is Saint John Henry Newman, because I'm a convert to the Catholic faith, and of course, he was a great 19th century British convert from Anglicanism. And his pathway into the Catholic Church was very similar to mine, and kind of read my way into the Catholic Church when I was in college. So I was a college student in a great books program, integrated humanities program. And so it was through reading great literature and poetry and art that first introduced me to the Catholic Church and then led me into the Catholic Church. So I've just followed his life. And I actually took his motto, cor ad cor loquitur. I stole it shamelessly. Heart speaks to heart, as my own Episcopal model. So Newman's been my friend since before I became a Catholic, and I continue to read him continuously. I suppose the most challenging thing for me as a bishop is all of the many administrative duties that you have. I suppose the governing side of being a bishop. You have to teach, and you have to preach and sanctify and govern. And that's become very complicated, I think, more complicated, let's say, for bishops now. So the pressures and the demands that are put upon the office probably are the most challenging, probably the least enjoyable, especially all the details of administration, but necessary. I just ordained 5 new priests a week ago on Saturday, and I'm just constantly edified by the faith they have in Jesus and their prayer life and their really kind of understanding their humanity. I think more and more dealing with their own woundedness, understanding their faults and failings, and trying to really, pray into those, and to really not see that as a hindrance to their ministry, but really to see that kind of vulnerability as a strength. Well, I think we all try to empathize with those who are struggling with mental health issues, but unless you've really had it yourself or gone into it yourself and experienced it in a personal way, I think you can always speak with greater conviction and understanding if you've been there. And so I think that's helped me. For whatever reason, God led me down this path and into a very dark place in my life for a sustained period of time. And so I think that experience, and I didn't really think at the time that it was, and I was just trying to figure it out myself. But now I look back on it, I'm 4 years away from my time of leave. I'm able to put it together a little bit better. And then knowing how prevalent mental health issues are and mental illness, I'm able to speak about it more comfortably and from the inside, you might say, because so many people are affected. And if it's not somebody directly that I'm ministering to, but it's someone who they love, or a friend or a colleague, and I think in general, the fact that as a society we're talking about it more and more and trying to quash the shame that's surrounded it, because that kind of keeps it hidden. And the more we talk about it, bring it out in the open, deal with it directly, then I think people can get help. I guess it was about a year ago I started thinking maybe I should tell my story. And I had been preaching about it more and more. And I just noticed that it had resonated, specifically particularly with young people. I gave a homily at a big Sikh conference for the Fellowship of Catholic University students a year ago in January, and I had to kind of step in for someone who had to step out, and so I didn't have much time to prepare, and I just thought, well, this is a topic that really resonates, I think, with young people, and these were 19,000 college students, and so I just told my story, and in a very kind of real way, and just kind of walked through it. And I was just overwhelmed with the response by young people, and just wanting to know more and wanting to hear about it. This young generation is a generation that's dealing more and more with issues of mental health, whether it be stress, anxiety, depression, and it's a society, as someone once said, that it's a society that permits everything and forgives nothing. Permits everything. I mean, they have everything available to them, more so than any generation. And at the same time, there's probably demands put upon young people and expectations that's greater than any other generation. And so they're in a bind, so to speak. And so there's a lot of pressure. And then they've got young people have all of this, and I experience this myself, all of this information coming and streaming at them 24/7, and it's absolutely impossible to sort it all out, yet you're expected to. And, I think that's sort of was the beginning of my troubles, is trying to, again, in a way that's very American, is to figure it out yourself, this ungodly self-reliance that we think that we're responsible for the outcomes of everything we do, and that the expectations are high, especially for a Catholic bishop, and so that I'm responsible for that in every way. This was an important issue with them, and it was an issue that just was very pervasive. And so I thought, well, maybe if I told my story and then offered resources and help, knowing that there's lots of help out there. That's the worst thing, I think, that you feel like you're all alone and isolated, because social media, it's really kind of counterintuitive. They're more connected. They have more access to people than ever before, and yet they're the most lonely and isolated society ever before. So it's got a strange effect on young people. And so the worst thing to think is you're all alone, that nobody understands me, and that it's my own problem that I have to deal with myself, which is the worst thing. And hopefully, the hope of the pastoral letter is to help people to break through that, to get help, especially talk about what they're going through with people they trust, their closest friends, and people who love them and want to help them. And then also to know that there's just a whole array of professional help out there that's available to them, and that just like, you wouldn't hesitate to go see a doctor if you're struggling from some kind of physical malady, whether it be diabetes or something, there's no shame in getting help. Well, I think the fact that we as Catholics, have a really a particular and unique, you might say, Christian anthropology, that we see the human person as an image of and likeness of God, who reflects the attributes of God, created in his image and likeness, but we are beloved sons and daughters of the Father. So that unique beauty of the human person and dignity and sanctity of the human person, I think, puts us in a different area, puts us in a different environment for getting help. And I think it's important that we seek help from professionals who understand our vision for human flourishing, so that we are, creatures that have an eternal destiny. And so a psychologist or a psychiatrist that believes that as well is going to be more helpful than someone who isn't. Not to say that the secular world doesn't have great and competent medical professionals, but I think it's important that we're very intentional about seeking the help we need from people and professionals who share our same worldview. So like, for instance, when I took my leave, I had a wonderful, very Catholic physician. I had a wonderful Catholic psychotherapist who was also, basically in secular practice, but just shared the same worldview. I had a wonderful spiritual director, because spirituality, even though we can't pray ourselves out of something that's body and soul, and that's an important distinction to make. Prayer is very important, but also we're body and soul, and grace builds upon nature. So if something in nature is awry or suffering, then we need to attend to that with the professional help that's available. So a spiritual director, I had a great spiritual director who understood that, and then applied the great tradition of spirituality. I mean, I point out in my pastoral letter that saints struggled with this, that many of our great saints, St. Ignatius of Loyola, for instance, contemplated suicide. But so spirituality has a part to play, but it kind of works with everything else. I think it's always very important when someone is discerning anything, particularly a vocational decision, is to have a good spiritual mentor, a spiritual director, or someone they trust. It doesn't have to be a priest. Oftentimes it is. But someone who they look up to, someone who's maybe more experienced in the world and wiser, has had more life experience, and to share your desires and hopes with them, and to get guidance, and not to think I've got to figure this out myself, and that's always that's always a difficult thing to do, to be open with someone and to share with someone, your deepest feelings and thoughts. But it's important because not only can you hear yourself, explain your journey, but also you can bounce ideas off people and they can give you feedback and help you and guide you, because we're not alone. I guess that's probably the most important thing, that we're not alone. That there are people who want to help us out there, and especially when we're in our own head, that's always a difficult thing. Someone once said, "The mind is like a deep and dark forest. You never want to go in alone," and I think that's important. That you take someone with you, even in your own thoughts. Ultimately, obviously, you have to make the decision yourself. People don't make those. You have to come to the decision yourself, but you can have help along the way. Well, I think the longer the longer I'm a bishop, I've kind of tried to distill it down to two things. Jesus was, first of all, a teacher and a healer, and Catholic education and Catholic health care. We've been involved in that from the very beginning, from apostolic times. So I'm trying to concentrate my energies and my ministries, both in the Diocese of Lincoln, but also in national organizations, committees, and different organizations I'm involved in Catholic education and Catholic healthcare. So our Catholic schools, we're undergoing a deep renewal of our Catholic schools in liberal education, and trying to renew kind of the holistic education of the whole person in our schools, body, mind, and soul. And then I'm very involved in Catholic health care. I'm the National Episcopal Advisor to the Catholic Medical Association, the Episcopal Board Advisor, Board Chair of the Catholic Healthcare Leadership Alliance, and working with young physicians and residents to, again, bring this holistic view of the person, this Christian anthropology to medicine. So those are kind of the areas I'm trying to spend most of my time in, is Catholic education and Catholic healthcare. My favorite thing about being a bishop would be probably being able to see the church from this kind of global view, to see all of our parishes and parish ministries, our youth, our young adults, our married couples, our older brothers and sisters like myself, and those of us who are in the fourth quarter, and just to see the church in just this full panoply, or kind of very whole vision of the church working. And a bishop, that's the disadvantage is, you're not involved deep down into the weeds of people's lives, like you are as a pastor in a parish, on an everyday basis. But as a bishop, you have some of that, but mostly as a bishop, we see kind of the big picture. And I suppose, and also the second thing I think is the capacity to be able to do good. Because of the authority of a bishop and the leadership that he has, he's able to affect changes and to bring about new things in a way, in exercising his episcopal authority and influence. So that's exciting to be able to do as a bishop. I just think that we need to be aware of those who are suffering around us, as the parable of the Good Samaritan reminds us, and to realize that the most important thing, I think, obviously our relationship with Jesus, but to live joy-filled lives. The joy, never take for granted the gift of joy, and to try to live joy. I mean, every day I try to get outside and recognize the beauty of God's creation. I try to bring music into my life, listen to good music every day, to recite a poem, a beautiful poem, or to try to look at something like a beautiful piece of art every day, and I think that's important because we can get so caught up in our duties that we don't see all these beautiful things around us. So to bring beauty into in her daily life is really important.